Welcome to today's live Q&A. My name's Lenny. I'm going to be answering your questions about selling on Amazon. We're going to get started. When the supplier says that their lead time is 25 to 30 days, is this only the production time? How long does it take to ship your products? Yes, essentially, if a supplier gives you a lead time, like 25 to 30 days, that is just referring to the process of manufacturing the actual product. That's not including shipping. Generally, that's going to be a separate amount of lead time that you're going to be given. It does depend on whether you're sending via air or ocean, but to give you a very rough ballpark amount, I would say it can be 2 to 4 weeks for air shipping, or more likely to be, say, 30 to maybe 45 days for ocean. Essentially, air is quicker, but it's more expensive. Ocean is cheaper, but it takes longer. Actually, maybe it's more like 30 to 60 days. So it is significantly longer. Generally, 25 to 30 days lead time for a supplier sounds about right. Again, it'll depend on what type of product that you're making, but a lot of the products that I've sold before, it's generally up to about a month or so. So I think that's like pretty typical. Next question here. Can you provide instructions on how to sell both FBA and FBM? Are they both on Amazon and under the same listing? Great question. I think I was really confused about this before I tried out FBM. I don't really do too much FBM, but we did actually test it out a couple of years back. Essentially, if you want to sell FBA and you also want to sell FBM, it does all live on the one listing. They both appear as what's called an offer on that listing. So if you've ever been to a listing and under the little checkout add to cart box, you'll see, buy from other sellers, essentially. And so you can see when other sellers are selling your product, which would be more common if it's a wholesale product where multiple sellers are selling it. If you're doing private label, you most likely, or you shouldn't have anyone else selling your product unless you've given them permission. But that is also the area where you would see a FBM offer if you've listed that in addition to your FBA offer. So you can sell a product and you can have your FBA offer, and you can also create an FBM offer. Most likely the FBA offer will win the buy box, but you can have the option of both. And yes, they do live on the same listing. Next question is, to get the FN SKU code, I would add a product, but Amazon wants me to go through a brand approval process. Can I click on this product does not have a brand name and then get my FN SKU barcode and go through the brand approval process later? So this is referring to, I believe, when you're first setting up or creating a product, yes, it will ask you for the brand name, but at that point, you can actually just say, I think you put in NA, or you can avoid, you don't have to fill in the brand name at that time. You can just create your listing without having a brand name and brand registry. You can then, after that point, go get brand registry, and then I believe you can update the brand name later on. So yes, you can do essentially what you outlined there. All right, next question here. How much money to get started paying for the manufacturer, for the inspection, your labeling, logo, brand? Just a rough quote. Do I need to have cash? Is it going to be like $4,000 to get it launched? Great question. We often get asked this. How much money essentially does it take to get started on Amazon? It is always really hard to answer because it depends kind of answer, but I will give you a bit of an idea here. This person put out the number of like $4,000, and I think that is a good amount. It is possible to get started with a little amount. You could technically get started with $500 or $1,000. However, I'm not going to tell you that that's very common. That would be quite difficult. You would have to find a product that is very, very inexpensive, or And or you would need to only buy a small number of units, 30, 50 units or something like that, maybe 100 units. You would have a small amount of units, and technically you can get started that way, but you're going to run out of stock very quickly, and then you're just going to need more money to send in more inventory anyway. Or if you're able to recoup money from that first 50 to 100 units, you are going to have to go through the whole process again and be out of stock for potentially 6 to 8 weeks again in order to top up your inventory. So it is possible, but it's going to be a lot slower, and it's more difficult to find products that are cheaper up front. More likely, I would say $2,000 is more of a reasonable minimum amount to get started selling on Amazon. But I would say at least $3,000 to $4,000 is a more comfortable amount to get started. So again, there's lots of variables. I can't give you an exact amount, but those are the ranges that I would give. If you've got any follow-up questions regarding that, then let me know in the chat here. All right, I can see some questions are here in the chat now, so I am going to jump into the chat and answer your questions. Let's see here. So again, if you've got any questions for me, drop them in the chat box. Okay, let's see. Awesome. Okay, Name It Buddy says, in the buy box, we sometimes see that there are, for example, 10 sellers, but when we explore it and see that few of them are the same seller out of those 10 sellers. So how is the same seller appearing many times? What this could be is similar to what I mentioned before. You can actually have multiple offers, or you could have an FBA offer and you could have an FBM offer. Beyond that, I'm not sure why you would see the same seller multiple times. I've typically, sometimes seen up to 2 times, but I haven't often, I don't think, or I don't recall seeing sellers appear there multiple times. That is a little bit odd. Ultimately, what we focus on a lot is the private label business model, where you're really just selling your own brand and you typically don't have to worry about anyone else selling on that listing. And then especially if you go out and get brand registry, which we would recommend at some point when it makes sense, then that gives you even more protection to prevent people from coming onto your listing and selling counterfeit or knockoff products under your listing. Easy Sales saying they were the first here. I believe you. Thanks for joining. Glad to have you here. Okay. Name It Buddy says, is Amazon wholesale FBA dead? I don't think it's dead. Actually, I thought the question was like, is selling on Amazon in general dead? Because the answer is a definitive no. But when I reread that, I see that you're talking specifically about wholesale. Honestly, I don't have a lot of experience with wholesale. Talked with a few people that do wholesale. I know people personally that are still doing the wholesale model. I'm a little biased because I do prefer the private label model for reasons that I've already sort of touched on. The fact that you are building your own brand. You're not just relying on someone else's brand and they're taking an additional cut and you're getting less profit. So is Amazon wholesale dead? Again, I'm not the best person to speak to. I wouldn't say that it's dead, though. From what I have heard, it is getting more increasingly hard to find products and brands that are willing to have those wholesale partnerships. The reason being is that it's become more and more accessible for people to sell on Amazon. So we're seeing a lot more of those brands that perhaps in the past would wholesale to other Amazon sellers or let other sellers sell their product on Amazon. Those brands are now selling on Amazon themselves, or maybe they're like hiring someone on their team to manage their Amazon business. So we have seen a little bit of a trend of more brands selling on Amazon themselves, but I would say that there are still lots of great opportunities there. We do actually have a video on the wholesale process, which you can find on our channel. Just type in wholesale. Jake does a great explanation of ways that you can find wholesale suppliers. There's various directories and other ways to go about it. So it's still definitely possible. Yes, it is harder than it has been before, though. Let's see. Okay, question here from Tarquia. I apologize if I said your name wrong. How long should I let a keyword spend on Amazon PPC if it's just spending but not getting sales? That's a great question. I'm trying to think of a rule of thumb off the top of my head, but we'll go back high level. Is there any scenario where you would want to let a keyword spend if it's not getting sales? Let's see. I'm just collecting my thoughts here. How long should I spend? Well, to be honest, there's not a specific answer, but you ultimately need to be the judge of how long to keep spending on a keyword before you either stop spending on it or you reduce the bids, meaning that it will still get some visibility, but you're not spending as much money on it. My other question would be, is it getting clicks? So for example, you could have a keyword that's getting a lot of clicks, but maybe hasn't gotten many sales. If it's getting a good amount of clicks, then I would let it run a little bit longer, because getting clicks is the first thing that you're trying to get. If you're getting clicks, then I would hold out a little bit longer. If you're spending a lot of money and you're not getting any clicks even, then it's really ineffective, and therefore I would probably shut it down a little bit sooner. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have like a rule of thumb. I would look at maybe how many impressions. If you've had, maybe a few thousand impressions and you're not getting many clicks and certainly not getting many sales, then I would shut it down. Typically, I would do something like if a keyword is maybe getting 10, 15 clicks and it hasn't got any sales, then I'd perhaps shut it down or just pull back the budget. But yeah, if it's not even getting clicks, then I would probably shut it down pretty soon. I don't have any specific numbers, but if anyone else has any thoughts on how they approach this, then feel free to drop that in the chat. Question here from James. Barcodes. So if I send a product that is already selling on Amazon, will they assign a barcode for me? If so, do I then have the source supplier put it on, or will Amazon do it? So this would be likely referring to wholesale. There's a product that's already selling on Amazon, so there are already sellers on that listing, and you're wanting to become another seller on that existing listing. So this is typically where you would apply your own barcode to that listing. It's called an FN-SKU barcode. And each individual seller will have their own FN-SKU barcode, even if it's the same product on the same listing. Essentially, the reason for that is so that Amazon can tell whose inventory it belongs to. If there are multiple people selling a product, then Amazon needs to know whose inventory it is and who to pay, essentially, for those sales. So this is where you would want to put on your FN-SKU barcode, and you have the option of either doing it yourself or you can get Amazon to do it. So you could ask the source supplier if they're willing to do it, if they'll do it for free, if they'll charge you for it, or maybe they won't do it, and in which case you would need to do it or organize a service to do it. But essentially, either you or you can get someone to organize and do it, Or you can, when you're creating your shipping plan and sending it into Amazon, you can actually nominate Amazon to put on the FNSKU barcode for you. And typically it costs about 20 cents per unit for them to do it. So those are your options there. All right, question from Anna. Hello from Palm Springs. What would you do if you had $600 to $1,000 to start? I'm asking for a good product direction. Thank you. Open to any suggestions. This is a great question. What would I do if I had $600 to $1,000 to start? I'd certainly be trying to restrict the cost of the product. I'd probably be trying to find a product that's under $3. There are so many different ways to go about product research. Of course, Jungle Scout has a lot of great product research tools that you can utilize that help you generate ideas. But another way that you can go about it, none of these are right or wrong. I often like to have a mixture of them. But another way could just be to go straight to somewhere like Alibaba and see what products that they're selling. And sometimes I find that interesting, starting with, well, what products can I purchase? And then go to Amazon and see, well, is there demand for this product? So I would maybe look around on Alibaba and click into the different categories, just have fun shopping around and looking around on Alibaba, trying to find what sorts of products are under $3. And then I would go over to Amazon for each one of those products that I find, type that product in, see how much demand there is, because above everything, you need a lot of demand. Typically, we say you want to find products that are selling on average at least 300 sales per month. It can be more, it can be less, but that's a good rule of thumb. If you're finding a product that costs less than $3, it's probably going to be a cheaper product that maybe sells between $10 to $20, I'm assuming. We typically suggest trying to get like the price higher than $20, because underneath $20 the profit margins get very slim. So in this instance, when I'm looking for a $3 and under product and it's likely going to be on the cheaper side, you probably want to absolutely have 300 sales as a bare minimum, ideally maybe more, 400 or 500, in order to make up the same revenue amount that a $20 product would be selling for. Maybe high level, that's what I would do. Try to find a product that's fairly inexpensive to make, and then just apply all of the same things that we typically talk about, which is, can I differentiate this some way? Is there an easier way to differentiate it? Can I bundle it with something else that comes from the same supplier, ideally? And I would see how many units I can send in. I don't even know. Let's see if I had, maybe that's about 200 units. So if I could send in 200 units at $3, that's $600 of my budget. And then I'd probably have to do less. It might have to be like 150 units, which is $450. So you've got $550 left. Hopefully that could cover your shipping. Let's say that the product is, let's say $4.50 including shipping. So if I did that, $4.50, maybe, let's say 150 units. So let's say you could get 150 of these units in to Amazon for $675. That leaves you $325 to, maybe put towards some advertising to help kickstart your listing. I am missing a few things here, of course, but I'm just trying to keep it fairly simple and high level. You do need things like taking photos of your image, but what I would do is I would request a sample. That might cost $50 to $80 or something like that to get a sample air shipped to you. But what you could do is you could then take photos of it yourself, so you could put off the expense of getting a photographer. I'll stop there. If you have any follow-up questions, Anna, then please drop them in the chat there. That was a very scrappy, quick example. I would probably give it a lot more thought, but hopefully that sparked some ideas for you. All right, question from Rajan here. If we sell a new product, do we need a trademark? The answer is no. You don't need a trademark to start selling your own product. I'm specifically talking about a private label product where you're selling your own brand new product. You don't need to get a trademark first. The benefit of getting a trademark as far as selling on Amazon is a trademark allows you to enroll in a program called brand registry. Brand registry just opens up a whole bunch of additional features on Amazon, and I would say it's a very good idea, but you don't need it when you launch on day one. And the reason I say that is because it can cost, I'm not sure, $600, $700, maybe up to $1,000 to get a trademark. So it does cost money. That's why if you're looking to get started, I would say prioritize getting your inventory, sending it in, getting your listing up and starting to make sales. Then as you start to make sales, you can put some money into getting a trademark and then brand registry. In an ideal world, if you've got the funds, then it is nice to start out with brand registry. There are a bunch of different features that you get. Namely, one of them is called A+ content. You've likely seen on Amazon these listings where when you scroll down, instead of a description, they've got big, beautiful images and text. And that's, essentially what A+ content is and one of the many benefits you get from brand registry. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, what is the average time for someone to officially start FBA? Well, in fact, in the next week or so, we're going to be launching our annual State of the Amazon Seller report for 2024. And in fact, that's one of the questions I believe that gets answered in there is how long does it take to get started? So I don't have the numbers up my sleeve, but definitely check out that report. It'll be linked on our website next week. And in that, you'll find out sort of what ranges people, like what percentage of people started under $500 or between, $1,000 and $3,000. And you'll get to see the averages across all Amazon sellers or a good portion of Amazon sellers. But I can sort of speak from my personal experience and just from the people that I've talked to. I would say an average time for someone to officially start would be maybe about 4 months, 3 to 4 months. It's certainly possible from the day that you sort of narrow in on a product, or maybe you're in product research. I would say it's possible to get started within 3 to 4 months. Product research is a little bit hard to nail down. I'm assuming that likely many of you are getting started on the side of maybe studying or working or other types of commitments. And often what that looks like is doing an hour of product research here and there, maybe in the evenings, on the weekends. And you might be doing this over days or a few weeks. And so it sort of depends. If you just dedicated an entire weekend to doing product research, I think it's very likely that you could find a good product idea to help you get started. Or if you don't have that time, or it's not as urgent, then yeah, that might stretch out to a few weeks. It just kind of depends on where you're at. So that's why the process is a little bit hard to narrow down. But let's say you've found a product idea, you start reaching out to suppliers. I would say you could get some good replies back between 7 to 10 days. From there, you would want to order a sample of the product, most likely, and ideally get samples from a couple of different suppliers. And so you would order the samples. It might take another week. Typically, those come by air. Another week to kind of get that sample. Then let's say it could be up to another week because you're busy and you're working in life. So maybe another week to then make a decision. In best case scenario, you really like the samples and you're like, okay, I want to go with this supplier, place this order. So you then place an order with your supplier. Let's say it could take about 30 days to manufacture your product. Then let's say another 30 to 40 days to get it shipped into Amazon, potentially. So there's another month. So we're already at 3. Yeah, we're already at like 3 to 4 months. But maybe a little more commonly, that's maybe maybe that's kind of best case, or a little bit of a speedier timeline. Probably 4 to 5 months is perhaps more average. Under 6 months for sure, or maybe we could say 3 to 6 months. Hopefully that gives you an idea. I feel like I'm throwing out lots of numbers, but it really does depend. But hopefully I've given you a little bit of an idea of what the timeline could look like. Azhar says, what is a custom image for the new PPC campaign? Honestly, I don't know. I haven't checked that out, but thanks for asking. I'll check it out, and if you join our live Q&A next week, I'll try and make sure to include this question, because that I'm really curious now. All right. What tips would you give to those who still want to sell a product with high demand and high competition? As I've said before, high demand is absolutely necessary. That's the one thing that you really shouldn't budge on. If there's not demand for your product, then you should move on and find another one that has demand. If you're going to go through all of this expense and this work, you might as well be doing it for a product that sells really well. That's, I was going to say half the battle. It's maybe not half the battle, but it's a lot of the battle. High competition. So a lot of people talk about wanting to find high demand and low competition products. In an ideal world, that's what you want. You want a product that sells really well and there's not too many other competing folks, so that you can get in and start selling your own product. But finding low competition products is becoming increasingly difficult on Amazon. So now what is more reasonable is high demand and then maybe medium competition. Sometimes you might have to go into high competition. Now, it's definitely still possible, and a great example of that is a product that we launched here a couple of years ago, which is our washable pee pads for dogs. There's one in the corner of the shot on that shelf over there. But essentially that had a lot of demand, but it also had a lot of competition. There was all the listings on page 1. They had hundreds or thousands of reviews. And yeah, I was definitely worried about selling in this market because I'd never sold a high competition product before. But I was really surprised that we managed to break in. And the lesson I learned from that is that even if there's high competition, you can still break in and capture a lot of sales if the demand is insanely high as well. What I realized is that there was just so much demand for this product that there was enough of it to go around, even though it was a competitive niche. So that was a great lesson for me to understand that you can sell high competition products. But what I would caution you about, though, is that it is going to take more time and money. You do need to have a lot more money to essentially buy a lot more inventory up front, because in order to break into that highly competitive niche, you're likely going to have to do some steep discounts to incentivize people to buy your product that has 0 reviews over all these other listings that have thousands. So you're typically going to need to either break even or potentially even take a loss on your product to begin with. And you might have to do this for hundreds of products, depending on how competitive, maybe even thousands. So you're going to have to be able to sustain a long period of time breaking even or losing a little bit of money per unit. But what this is going to do is as you get all of those sales, a certain percentage of them are going to leave reviews. And then as you start to get your review count up, ideally the mark that we like is kind of hitting that 3-figure mark. So getting to 100 reviews. If you can kind of get to that point, then you've got a much higher chance of converting people, and you can start to bump your price back up to, what you want your ideal price to be. But essentially, with a highly competitive product, you're going to have to grind through that phase for a lot longer than a product that's in a less competitive market. Hopefully that makes sense, but let me know if you have any questions on that. To give you an example, again, was our washable pee pads for dogs. We sold at a break even, or I think we lost maybe a little bit of money per unit for the first 3 to 4 months. And we lost, I can't remember the number now. It was either $5,000 or $8,000. It was, it looked bad when you look at it on the graph. But what's really interesting is that after that 3 to 4 month mark, we got all of those initial reviews, and we got to a point where we were able to put up our price. And then you see in the graph that we started becoming profitable from, I think it was like 3 to 9 months, if I remember right, where we were profitable. But of course, that money was just paying us back and recouping what we lost in the initial 3 months. And then I think it was after month 9 that we were, still profitable per unit, but then the business was profitable because we'd recouped our initial investment, and then the business was just profitable after that. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Okay, I'm just going to have a coffee here for a sec as I look for our next question. Thanks everyone for dropping these questions in. These are great. Hopefully you're getting value. If these are helpful, then I'd love it if you just give a thumbs up down below. That tells me that this is valuable and helpful for you guys. Okay. All right, next question. When should you ignore a low opportunity score? So for those of you that don't know, when you're using the Jungle Scout extension, which runs live on Amazon search pages and product detail pages, it gives you what we call the opportunity score at the top, out of 10, with 10 being a great opportunity, 1 being a poor opportunity. So when should you ignore a low opportunity score? What I typically say to people, or to anyone that's asking about the opportunity score, is to very much just use it as a guide. So a lot of people say, like, what number do I need? I typically look at anything from 6 and above, maybe even 5 at times. Because it's really just kind of summarizing the entire page. It's just taking a quick look at the demand, the competition levels, and a couple of other factors, and then just coming up with that score. But you shouldn't ever just go off that score. You can use it as a starting point, and if it's really low, like I'd say if it's below 5, then you're probably safe just to move on from that opportunity. But I would say anything from a 5 and above, I would do my own checking. That's where you're looking at the individual listings on that first page of search results and seeing what's all of the demand and what's all of the competition levels. Because one of the important things you want to do is look at the distribution of the demand and the competition, meaning it might say that this is a high demand niche because there's 10,000 sales on that page, but if 9,000 of those sales are going to the top listing and then all of the other listings underneath that are getting 50, 100 sales, then I would stay away from that niche because the data is showing that everyone is just buying from this one listing, and even if you're on this first page of search results, no one else is really getting many sales. This one or two listings is getting a monopoly. So what you want to see is that the demand is fairly well spread out. And you also want to do the same with the competition. You want to see how many listings have 1,000 plus reviews, how many have less than 1,000. You kind of want to gauge all of that, and you can only do that by looking at the individual listings. The opportunity score is just kind of averaging everything. So it's, again, a good starting point, but I would, check all the listings individually. Okay, HK asks, what is the strategy to enter the marketplace for products like bed sheets, which have thousands of sellers and hundreds of thousands of buyers, and every seller has a brand shop? Well, the first thing I would say, if you're going into a competitive niche like this, you really want to find a way to stand out. If you really want to sell bed sheets, ask yourself, what is the reason that someone would buy your bed sheets rather than all of these others that are on the market? And so a great way to figure that out is by reading customer reviews. So open up the listings of a lot of these top products, and then in particular, I would look at what are people saying problems with those products. So I would go down to the 1 and 2 star reviews and see what are some common threads. Are people commonly saying that these bed sheets tear, or the fabric isn't nice feeling, or they're too short, they don't fit the bed? I'm not sure, but look for problems that are common with all of these top products or all of the existing products. So try to find trends and go, oh wow, a lot of these existing products all have this type of problem. Take that problem, go to your supplier, and then essentially try to create a product that fixes that problem, whether it's like, okay, I need a stronger, more durable material, or I need to source a very particular material that people really love. So you need to differentiate your product is the first step, because if you're just selling the same product as everyone else and there's already hundreds of listings there, then yeah, it's going to be very difficult for you to break in. You still can, but it's going to be tough unless you've got something to set you apart from everyone else. Then if you are able to solve a problem that no one else or not many other people have, your next step is to kind of like shout it at the top of your lungs. When you're building out your listing, you want to make that differentiator loud and clear. You might be able to even weave that into the title. That would be great. You definitely want to put that in your images. So you would have your main image, which needs to be against a white background, but then image 2, I would, whether it's a lifestyle image or whatever, I would make sure I'm calling out like, this is my number one differentiator. I would put it at the top of the bullet points. I would put it at the top of the description or the A+ content, and really draw attention to why your product versus the other ones on the market. There's a really great type of image that you'll likely often see, which is a us versus them photo, where they'll have our product and then, others. And it'll either be like a competitive matrix where it's like ours is like hypoallergenic and durable, etc., and your product has ticks, and then everyone else's has crosses, or it might be something visual where you have a photo of your product that shows that it's more durable somehow, and then you show a photo of other brands and it's got a tear in it or something. That's like a great way to draw attention again to your differentiator. But you really do want to make sure that this comes from data, and reading reviews is the best way to do that. Like I said, negative reviews, but also looking at positive reviews and seeing like, what are people commonly saying they absolutely love? Like, what is important to people that are buying bed sheets? Now, if you want a more automated way to do this, then I would recommend checking out Jungle Scout's AI review analysis. And so that actually does what I said, and it analyzes all of the reviews on any listing automatically, and then it gives you summaries of what people like, what they don't like, how to beat this product, how to improve it. And so it does all of that work for you in just a few seconds. So that's definitely been a game changer tool that is in the Jungle Scout suite of tools. And yeah, I'd highly recommend to anyone that's either looking to launch a new product or just trying to get more insight into their own products or their competitors' products. Okay. Christopher's asking, how can we see the rotation of the buy box and how many sales they're getting per seller? To be honest, I don't really know. Again, because I don't do wholesale, I'm not super familiar with the rotation of the buy box, unfortunately. So I'm not able to answer that one. There might be tools out there. I'm just not really as familiar with that world. So yeah, sorry, I can't answer your question, but I just wanted to acknowledge that one. Okay. Question here from Insane Gaming. Can I sign up without an LLC? Yes. So you can set up a Seller Central account just as an individual, or you can do it as a business and then select an LLC or some other type of corporation. The thing to note is that you can begin as an individual if you don't want to take the time or the expense to set up an LLC initially. You can sign up as an individual, but then at a later point, you can actually update your business settings and then swap over to an LLC. So you can definitely change at any point. The one thing I would caution you is, the big benefit of having an LLC is that it separates your business from you. So in the probably rare, but in the instance that someone was to sue you because your product broke down, did something wrong, in the case that someone was to sue you, then if you aren't under a company, then someone could sue you and take your personal assets, your car, house, etc. But the biggest benefit of having an LLC is that it protects all of your personal assets. So that's why it's recommended to get an LLC. And then the other thing, once you've got an LLC, you can set up a separate business bank account and credit card, and you can keep all of the finances separate. So again, when you start out as an individual, you can do all that. You can put it into your personal bank account, etc. But that's it's just going to make things messy when it comes to tax time and trying to figure out all of the business numbers. If you are going to start out as an individual, I would still highly recommend at least creating a separate bank account, even if it's like a personal bank account. Just create a separate bank account so that at least all those transactions, the money being deposited, etc., is in its own account and it's not getting mixed in with all of your personal expenses. And to follow up, can I use a Gmail or business email? You can use any email that you like to set up a Seller Central account. That's fine. Nancy says, I want to add an item to my private label bundle. Do I need to sell out of my current inventory before I change the product photos and descriptions? Thanks for your help. Yes, that's a good question. So typically you couldn't change if you're changing the actual product significantly, then Amazon would expect you to create a new listing or to create a new variation on that listing. Just from my personal experience, I've updated an existing product where it's like I haven't changed it. I've just, I think to your point, added something to it, or updated the packaging and things like that, which I think is okay from my understanding. It's just Amazon doesn't want you to build up a listing under one type of product and then switch it out, later on. That's obviously not right. But in your instance, you're saying that you want to add an item to your private label bundle. I think you would need to sell out of your current inventory so that when you add new images that are showing like, oh, you get this item all included, you don't want people to see that image, buy that product expecting this extra item, and then it doesn't come. So yes, I think you would need to sell out of your current inventory completely and then send in your new inventory, make sure that's there, and then make sure your images, etc., go live. The only exception to that would be if it's like a small addition where it's like it's not the main product that's being advertised in the listing, but maybe it's just a little bonus item or something like that. Yes. So, for example, there's been some times in the past where I've sold a product and I actually wanted to just over-deliver, and so I added in like a small little gift item just to kind of just make people happier and hopefully get them excited enough to write a review, and I never even put it into the listing. So, often you will bundle things because you want to leverage that to make your listing stand out. But there's also the angle of like, oh, I'm not going to tell anyone or put it in the listing, and I'll let that be a surprise for when people open the product, and hopefully they just get so excited that like, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting more than I actually thought I was, and I'm going to leave a review. So there's that angle as well. But yeah, ultimately, as long as people aren't seeing these new images and as long as they're not seeing these images and not getting what they think that they're getting. Depending on what the change to the bundle is, it might be perfectly fine to send in your new inventory and wait a little bit longer to update your photos, making sure that you've definitely sold out of the old inventory and you're now selling this new inventory. So that might be the opposite, where a few people might be purchasing your product and they're getting an extra item that they didn't know about. I suppose like the example that I mentioned, that's probably okay unless unless it's changing what they thought they were getting. But if it's an additional item, then that might be cool. Those are my thoughts. Hopefully that helps. Muhammad says, selling branded products, how many sellers should be in there? So if you're selling your own branded product under the private label model, you should be the only seller. There shouldn't be any other sellers there. If there are, then you can request that Amazon kick them off. If you've got Amazon brand registry, I believe you get a separate portal to do that. And my understanding is that it's meant to be easier for you to essentially report people that are infringing on your listing. So yeah, it should just be only you if it's your product. Okay, let's go through here. All right, so I think a follow-up here from Term P, sign up on Seller Central, because if you don't need an LLC, neither a trademark. I think maybe this was referring to, I saw you had a previous question about how long it takes for someone to officially start FBA, and I think what I said was like maybe 4 to 5 months is like a good number there. Yeah, I think regardless of whether you're getting an LLC, that doesn't change. It doesn't take. I haven't signed up on Seller Central for a long time, but I do know that there is a little bit of a period there where you might have to wait for a postcard, or there's this verification process. I don't know what that looks like currently. My understanding is that it's a few weeks, or yeah, it's in the number of weeks. But I do know that there are people that have issues with that. They get rejected and they have to do it multiple times. So based on that, that could be a blocker that might extend your timeline. I was more referring to the timeline of actually getting the product to Amazon. But I would say if you start the Seller Central process early on, then you should have at least a couple of months up your sleeve before you really need the account. That would be essentially like you need the account to create the listing and then ship the product. So You don't need an Amazon account for doing product research, getting samples. It's only even ordering the product. You can order the product initially, and it's not until the product's ready to go and now you need an address to send it to. That's the point where you really need your Seller Central account in order to create the listing and therefore create a shipping plan. Okay, so using a Gmail is okay, or do I need a business email to sign up? If you've got your own domain and business email, then I'd recommend signing up with that, but it doesn't matter. It's fine using a Gmail. I just use a Gmail account. The email to sign up for your Seller Central account doesn't really matter. That's just your username for logging in. Once you're in there, that's when you go to your business settings. And what's more important is you setting up your business settings, whether you're an individual or an LLC, etc. But the actual email to sign up for the Seller Central account doesn't really matter. Takuya is asking, when you improve a product, you often have to spend a lot more time due to minimum order quantity being a lot higher for a custom order. How can a new seller stand out if they haven't got a lot of money? Great question. So this actually ties in a few things that I've talked about. But yes, it is important to differentiate today in 2024. And this can mean spending more money if you're customizing the product. You're saying, I need you to make this product out of a different material, or I need you to make it longer. In that scenario, the supplier would likely say, okay, we need to create a custom mold in order to manufacture this product, and you might have to pay a once-off fee for that mold, or they'll just charge you a higher unit price for it. So yes, it can cost more money. If you don't have a lot of money, maybe what I would do is, rather than modifying a product and, having that higher unit cost there, I'd maybe try bundling instead. So bundling two different products together or multiple products together is another way to differentiate, and it may cost you less than completely customizing a product, if that makes sense. So that's maybe my suggestion there, is to see if you can find some opportunities to bundle at least a couple of products together that people frequently buy together. And that might be cheaper than, making a custom product. Okay, let's see. Squid Gaming says, if there's a lot of Chinese sellers in a product niche, that could lead to price wars and make it a bad niche to launch in. Yes, I know that's certainly a concern. I know a lot of people do see, a lot of Chinese sellers undercutting them or selling a product at a very low price, and it can be very hard to compete with. Ultimately, there's not much you can do about it. What I would say is, for me, it doesn't really change the process. You're doing a lot of that analysis at the beginning when you're looking at the entire market and seeing, what is everyone selling at? What is the average price that everyone's selling at? And if I sell at the average price, can I still make a profit? So we always recommend making sure you've got a really healthy profit margin. Now, if you're seeing that a lot of those listings are selling at a really low price, and you do the calculations and you can't make a profit off of that, then I would just move on, because clearly lots of people are selling at a really low price. There's just not much profit in that niche. But as long as you hold out, make sure you find a niche or market that has good profit margins based off of the average price, then I would proceed. Now, does that stop Chinese sellers or anyone else coming in and undercutting in the future? No, it doesn't. It's possible, but you can't make decisions based off of something that hasn't happened yet. You can only make decisions based off of the data in front of you, and if it's a good market now, then you proceed, because you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe a Chinese seller will come in with a low price, maybe they won't, but you can't predict the future. But the other part that I would say to that is that's also why I believe that speed to market is really important. You could do product research today and go, wow, this is a really great niche. I can get 25, 30% profit margins on this. But if I wait 6 months to launch that product, then yeah, the market could be completely different at that point. So I truly believe in speed. If there's an opportunity, then just work as hard as you can to get that product made, get it sent into Amazon, and capitalize on that opportunity right now. The faster you can get your product to market, the faster you can start building up those reviews and sort of build this moat around your product that makes it harder for anyone else to get in. So that's my best advice, is seize opportunities that you see right now and get to market quickly. All right, thanks everyone for these questions. Looks like there's a lot here, so I'm going to try to speed through as many as I can. Let's see. Manuel says, I have spent $9,000 for a product called a urinal screen, but the competition is become insane and negative reviews by competitor. That's tough. I'm fortunate I've never come across this, but there are some niches and some products where some competitors can play dirty. I don't know whether that's the case here. Sometimes people have this issue where they might be getting sabotaged by other competitors in the space. I don't want to scare anyone, because honestly, I haven't seen that happen very often. You do read about it in forums and things, but I think that's like a small percentage of people that happens to. I think sometimes people think that that's happening, but maybe they're not accountable for the fact that there is a genuine problem with your product. I'm trying to think what advice or what I can say to you to help out in this situation. Negative reviews can be tough. It depends when you're getting them. If you're getting them early on, like you've got under 5, 10, under 25 reviews, all of those negative reviews greatly impact your overall rating. But let's say you've got 100 reviews and you've got an average of 4.7, and then you get a 1-star review. That's not going to be enough to affect your average star rating all too much. So that's also actually why you want to quickly build up reviews as quickly as possible, because then that gives you a defense against any negative reviews in the future. But yeah, it's tough when you're starting out, because if you get a few negative reviews in the early days, that can be really hard to turn around. If you've just got 1 or 2, then potentially you could keep pushing through, trying to get a few more 5-star reviews to help bump your score up and sort of push through. If you feel like that's not possible, then it might be time to kind of close that listing down, or potentially relaunch under a new listing if you just feel like it's kind of a lost case. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm very sorry to hear that. Tools Explorer asks, if I list the private label product generic in my store, will there be any problem? I believe you're saying that it's generic, meaning there's no brand. That's not a problem. You can update that in the future, if I'm following that right. Alex says, what should I do if a product gets clicks on PPC, but orders are done rarely? I would see, is that happening on multiple keywords or just one keyword? If you're seeing that it's a trend, I'm advertising on multiple keywords, they're all getting a good amount of clicks, but I'm just not getting a sale, then you can prescribe that the problem is your listing or your price. there's something there that you need to optimize, and you're going to need to test to figure out what that is. I would start by optimizing your listing, seeing, am I really pointing out the benefits, what people get from using and buying my product? How is my pricing compared to the competitors? Am I a lot higher? If you're higher than the competitors, you might see that other competitors are advertising on your listing. There's a type of ad where competitors can appear on your listing, and a good strategy with that is to advertise on listings like yours that are priced higher. Because if I've got a listing selling this mug for $50, and a competitor could come in and their ad could be underneath and their mug is only $40, and someone on this listing, they might have clicked in because it looked good, but then they're like, oh wow, I can actually get the same thing but $10 cheaper, so I'm going to do that. So that's one thing I'd consider as well, is see, is there anyone advertising on your listing? Are they cheaper than you? But probably mostly like optimizing your images and your title, bullets, and description to make sure that you're really selling your product. Actually, go back to what I mentioned earlier. I would use a tool like Jungle Scout's review analysis to review your listing and your competitors' listings to see what do people really like and what do people really dislike, and make sure you're addressing those when you're optimizing your listing. All right, can you elaborate more on the shipping cost once you find a product? I won't give any pricing here because it does vary quite a lot, so I'll keep it fairly high level. You have two ways you can ship to Amazon. You can go via air, or you can go via sea. Sea is a lot cheaper, but it takes longer. Air, on the inverse, is a lot more expensive, but it will get your product in a lot quicker. So you have to decide on which method you want to go with. Then how you actually do this is you can either go to what's called a freight forwarder. Let's essentially just call it a company that handles all of the shipping process for you. There's a whole bunch of different things that need to be sorted out, like customs and paperwork and bonds and things, all of which, like, honestly, I still don't know all of that stuff because I've used a freight forwarder in the past, and essentially they're just a partner that organizes all of the shipping process for you. So you essentially want to find a freight forwarder, and then they can organize picking up your product from the supplier. An alternate to finding a freight forwarder that you work with is you can often ask your supplier to organize that for you, and then they will typically organize the shipping for you using freight forwarders that they have or do work with. And so the supplier will say, okay, it's going to cost $3,000 for this shipment. And so you would just pay the supplier the same way that you paid them for the product, and then they organize the shipping on their end, and they're the main contact. When choosing between those two, I've typically found it is usually a little bit cheaper going through your supplier. But what I dislike about it is that you have less visibility into what's happening with your shipment. Typically, I don't get a very reliable tracking number, or I'm constantly asking my supplier, where's the shipment at? And I don't have a direct line of contact to the freight forwarder. And so I find I have less control that way. And so that's always frustrated me a little bit, but you might find that is cheaper than going directly to a freight forwarder. But if you use a freight forwarder, you've got contact with them. You can, typically, like, a lot of them will be, based in the US. You'll be able to get direct contact, get a lot more transparency into what's going on, and can give you more peace of mind. But I would encourage you to get quotes from both. There is more depth that you could get into. Shipping's quite a loaded topic. There are like these things called eco terms, but I'm not going to go into that right now. that's a fairly high-level explanation. Sorry, I keep bumping my mic here. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of a starting point there. Yeah, but if you have any other specific questions about shipping, then let me know. All right, I'm going to keep going for the next 20 minutes here. I'm going to try to get to as many questions as I can, but I apologize if I don't get to all of your questions today. I did just lose where I was at, so let me scroll back up. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to read this one out. I'm not sure what the question is yet. I am giving a better deal than my competitor, but still not getting the sale, even though I've done proper keyword research. Additionally, the product is high in demand, and I'm running PPC too. Okay, I'm thinking this is like referring back to the question earlier about I'm not getting sales, but I'm getting lots of clicks. Essentially, it is going to just come down to testing. Again, if people are clicking, like you're getting clicks, that tells you that your ad spend is working. Could it be doing better? Could you be getting more clicks? Maybe. But if you are getting clicks, you at least know that something about your ad is working. People are clicking because they like the main image, the title, the price. They like something there, so they're clicking on your listing, and then there's some reason why they're on your listing and they're not adding to cart, and that's what you got to figure out. So it seems like, yeah, there's something wrong with your listing. You're ultimately just going to have to keep testing your images, testing your copy, testing your price, and seeing if any of those things make a difference. That's ultimately all you can do, again, if you're already getting clicks, but they're just not buying. This is a good question. For a first-time seller, do you recommend a sourcing agent to help to check products, labeling, and shipment to the US? Great question. I've never used a sourcing agent, but I've heard, talk to people that have, and they said it's been a great experience. This is just someone that essentially, as the name suggests, helps you source a product and helps do all of the organization around that and sending it into the US. I've never done that, so to be honest, I don't have much experience to be able to speak to this. For a first-time seller, yes, I would imagine that it would simplify the process. I would also say that it is very possible for a first-time seller to go through this process without a sourcing agent. I personally like to get rid of as many middlemen as possible because that offers the potential for someone else to take a cut of the product that I'm looking to sell. So I like to remove that as much as possible. So I guess I don't have a strong opinion. You could definitely use one, and it likely will make your first time a little easier. But I would also say that it is very possible for first-time sellers to go through this process. There's a lot of content out there, especially on our channel. You can watch our How to Sell on Amazon video that we released a couple of months back. That's got all of the steps to get started selling, including how to find a product and suppliers, how to do outreach, how to negotiate, etc. So you can follow that content and you can definitely do it. So I'll just leave you with those thoughts. All right. Let's see here. Abdullah says, I've purchased a GTIN and planning to source a product from Alibaba for 1K units. I want to be an FBA seller. I just want to source and sell. Will I become the sole seller of one of the sellers? Essentially, I think what you are describing here is the private label process. yes, you're sourcing a product from Alibaba. You're purchasing 1,000 units. You've purchased a GTIN or a UPC barcode, which, yes, you do need that in order to create your own listing under your name or under your brand name. So, yes, you'll be the sole seller. You've described the private label process, which is what we often talk about. The only thing that I want to note is that you do want to, at the bare minimum, put a logo on your product or create, ideally, custom packaging that has your logo and brand name on it. You don't want to literally just buy a product generic and do nothing to it. You used to be able to get away with that years ago and get sales, but that's a lot harder today, and particularly if you trying to get brand registry, which I've already said I recommend, you'll likely, or you might need to prove that your brand name is on your product. So at the bare minimum, yes, source from Alibaba, but make sure that you're getting a unique logo, your logo, put on it. Just make up a brand name. It doesn't really matter. Don't spend a really long time on it, but make sure you've got your own logo and brand name that you put on the product or put on custom packaging as well. And then, yes, create your own listing. You'll be the sole seller. Hello, I'm from Canada and I'd like to sell on the US market. I'm licensed in Canada, but do I need an LLC to sell in the US? I'm just trying to understand what you're meaning by licensed. If you're just talking about having a corporation, or you're talking about having an LLC, you can have an LLC in another country and use that to sell in the US marketplace. So when I first started, I set up, actually, I think I started as an individual, but then I set up a company in Australia and I sold in the US using my Australian company. So you can have an entity in whatever country you're in, and as long as you just input all of those details in Seller Central, you can do that, no worries. So hopefully that's what you're referring to is the business setup, but otherwise let me know if you meant licensing in a different way. Okay. How can I find which keywords are relevant or not on keywords search of a product? Sometimes they're similar. One doesn't have enough revenue. So let's see. You want to find highly relevant keywords for your product, and there's typically two main use cases. One, you want to put those highly relevant keywords that have a lot of search volume on your listing to help your listing display organically in Amazon search results. The other use case is you want to bid on those using Amazon advertising to help you get additional exposure on those keywords. And then as people click on those keywords and purchase your product, that actually then helps you additionally rank organically. So those are the kind of two main use cases. How can you find which keywords are relevant or not? The answer is use Jungle Scout. We've got a tool called Keyword Scout. You can either put in your competitor's ASIN, your ASIN, or you can put in a keyword. So you could put in the word backpack, for example. And Keyword Scout will tell you all of the relevant search terms relevant to backpack that also have high search volume, or it's ranked by search volume. So essentially that's how you find highly relevant keywords. You then, within Jungle Scout, you can save and organize those keywords in a list. And then from there, you can add them into your listing, or you can copy and paste them into your advertising campaign and start to advertise on them. You mentioned here revenue. Maybe you're talking a little more about like advertising on these keywords, which essentially is a lot of testing. Let's say you've got 20 keywords here that seem relevant to your product. You ultimately just have to run some campaigns and spend money on all of those. And the whole process of managing a PPC campaign is you're seeing which keywords are getting clicks, which ones are getting sales, etc. And the ones that are doing well, you might want to up your bid or you want to up your budget. The ones that aren't doing well, you want to reduce your bid or your budget, etc. High level, that's kind of the process. So you don't know which keywords are going to perform well in advertising at the beginning. It's literally just a matter of testing them out and then updating your campaign as you go. So to create A+ content and a brand shop, must we wait a year for brand registry? Otherwise, even with applied status, others can still steal and sell under our brand. So this comes back to the requirements for Amazon brand registry, and that is you need to have a trademark. Now, typically a trademark will take, potentially a year, maybe even longer to get that sort of approved and registered. There is another way to go about it, however, and that's called the IP Accelerator program. So this is where you actually go into Seller Central, and they've actually got a database there of legal firms that Amazon has partnered with that you can get your trademark through them. And if you get your trademark through them, then Amazon will actually accept a like a pending, or as soon as you've applied for the trademark process, which could just be a couple of weeks rather than a year. Once you've done that process, you can actually get into brand registry immediately. So it, again, shortens the process from 10 months, a year or more, down to just 2 or 3 weeks potentially. So I would highly recommend going through the Amazon IP Accelerator program. That's what I did. I actually found that it seemed quite reasonable price-wise. I think there's an assumption that maybe it costs more going that way, but that wasn't my experience. Amazon actually has pre-negotiated rates with the firms that they work with, and so I think they're limited by how much they can charge. But even if it did cost a little bit more, the benefit of getting into brand registry almost immediately, far outweighs, is totally worth paying an extra, a little bit in order to get that, rather than waiting an entire year. So that's what I would recommend. Now, I did see recently there seems to be an update where Amazon has said something about they're possibly now accepting trademark applications that are, I think, in a pending status. I haven't looked into it all that much, but there was some wording on Amazon that was relating to this, where it sounded like there was a scenario where you could get into brand registry without having your trademark fully registered. But I'm not super familiar with that or talk to anyone that's done that. So I would still recommend the IP Accelerator as the best way to get brand registry. How can you check high demand? Essentially, you're using sales as a gauge for high demand. Very rough rule of thumb is you ideally want to see the average of at least 300 sales per month or more. Again, that's just a rule of thumb. It can be a little bit less in certain scenarios, but generally look for that. You specifically can do that using tools like Jungle Scout. On Amazon, we have a Chrome extension, which will run and just tell you all of the sales numbers of all the products on that page. We also have a web application. You can go in there and you can search our database of products that meet your criteria, and that will also tell you what the demand levels are like. All right. Question here from Thought Waves. Hi, Lenny, aspiring Amazon seller here. What's your top advice for beginners? Also, you're a video editor. Oh, thanks. Glad that you loved the content. And thanks for the offer for editing help. Definitely will keep that in mind. All right, so what's my top advice for beginners? Let's see. I mean, we typically like always sharing this advice. So I'm always like trying to think, what have I not said? But I think I've said everything that is on my mind or that I think. But definitely the first thing that I always say is you don't want to budge on demand. You really need to make sure that lots of people want to buy your product. If there's not a market for it, then you're going to be wasting a lot of time and money. You really want high demand and you really want high profitability. So you really want to make sure before you pull the trigger on spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a product, you want to make sure that you can get really strong profit margins. You can either look at your net margin, which, I would look for at least 20, 25% net margin or higher if you can. The other metric that you can use is ROI or return on investment. And typically you want to aim for at least 100% is a good rule of thumb. Meaning if it costs me out of my pocket $5 to buy a product and get it shipped into Amazon. So let's say I buy this is $4 per unit and $1 for shipping, just to keep it simple. So out of my pocket, I need to spend $5 right now in order to send this into Amazon. It might cost another $5 in Amazon fees, which gets subtracted from this sales price. And then I would then want at least another $5 profit on top of that. So if I can send this in for $5, I want to be selling this for at least $15, knowing that Amazon's going to take $5. I had to pay $5 out of pocket, but then I get $5 profit after all of those expenses. That's a very simplified example, but essentially, yeah, if I put in $5, I want to get at least $5 back. If you're only getting $2 back, actually, I'm going to use a different number. If I'm only getting $2.50 back after all of my expenses, then that's a 50% ROI. And so I would ideally be looking for products that are going to get me closer to 100% or ideally more. So don't budge on profitability. The other reason that I really stress profitability is because in this line of business and any type of business, costs and things go up. I think we can all agree that costs of everything has gone up in the last year or so. But you'll encounter ups and downs with your business where maybe the price of the product goes up a little bit, or the cost of shipping, or the cost or customs and things. Not to scare anyone and say that this is happening all the time, but just in the life of your business, if you look over the long term, you encounter these challenges where maybe it's just for a period of time, costs go up and then they come down. And so you need to understand that there are going to be unexpected costs in this business. And if you're wanting this to be a long-term business, then you need to have a buffer there, meaning that you need to start with a really high profit margin so that if there are times when times are tough, you've got a buffer there and you can still make money, essentially. So hopefully that makes sense. But that would be my advice. Don't budge on demand and profitability. All right. When do I know if my product is good and I continue to keep selling it? Or when do I know it's not a good product and it's time to let it go? Great question. And there's probably a few different ways to look at it. I would say if this product is consistently losing you money, like you're not making any profit on it at all, then I would say it's time to let it go. Try to sell out of whatever remaining inventory you can. You might need to drop your price in order to get rid of that and hopefully recoup, ideally at least recoup the money that you put in, or as much of that as you possibly can. Now, the more gray area is actually the scenario that I talked about before. Let's say you're only making a couple of dollars profit on a product. So you are making a profit, but it's so small that it's going to take a long time for you to be able to reinvest that profit into another product, which is typically what you would want to do. You want to get profits from one product, and then you save that up, you invest it into a new product, and you just duplicate the process over and over. But if you're only getting $1 or $2 profit per unit, it's like, oh, this is just going to take so long that this just isn't a very good product. I really need a product that's getting me $4 or $5 or, at least 100% ROI or close to that, like I mentioned. So, do you close the product that's only getting you $1 or $2? You could argue both ways. You could say that, I need to cut my losses and get out of this now, just recoup as much of that money and just reinvest that into a new product that's going to be more profitable. On the other hand, there's the train of thought that it still is making some money, so why kill it if it's making something? I would divert my energy and time to more profitable products. I wouldn't spend much time on this one, but if it's fairly automated, all I need to do is just order new inventory every 3 months and it's still making some money, then it may be worth keeping. The way I'd answer that question is, if this is your only product and you've got no other money to invest into a new product that is more profitable, then I would say if you can't think of any way to revive this listing, make it more profitable, then I would try to sell it out, recoup all of my capital, and then invest that into a new product. But if you've got at least one other product or more that is doing well, then I would say there's no harm in letting this product keep going. It's definitely not your top product. It's not making a lot of money, but it's still making money, so I would leave it go. That's maybe how I would look at it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Other factors that might come into play for killing a product is if you are getting negative reviews. Let's say it might be a product that's breakable or electronic, or there's something about your product that's maybe getting negative reviews, or it's consistently getting returns. If you've got products that have a high return rate, it's not great that, Amazon can start to penalize your account a little bit. So you want to try to avoid products that have a high return rate. Those are probably some factors that I'd think about. Yeah, hopefully that helps. All right, I'm just going to take one more question here as we are 90 minutes in. Let's see. Oh, there's so many. Let's see. All right, so question here. Instead of researching any random product, if I've decided to export Vietnam-made products, is it a big mistake? As a local, it would make sourcing, shipping, quality control, etc. much easier. No, I wouldn't say it's a big mistake at all. In fact, I would say that's a really smart strategy. If you can source something locally, if you can source something locally and you've got the advantage of being able to do it cheaper, or maybe you can access suppliers that just aren't typically public that people in the US or in other countries can find easily, then I would say that's a great advantage. Essentially, it's not a mistake if you go through the rest of the steps as we often talk about in our videos. So as long as it's a product that you can sell for at, as long as it's a product that's high in demand, and when you run all the numbers, it's profitable, then no, I think that's a great idea. That's a great way to narrow down or kind of find a product to sell, is what can I source locally that I can maybe, source cheaper than anyone else. I think that's a great strategy. Alrighty. So that wraps it up for today. I apologize for the questions that I didn't get to, But we will be back next time, this time next week with another live. If I didn't answer your question, then make sure to drop your question in the comment section below. We'll be taking the questions from the comments on this replay, and we'll be answering them at the beginning of next week's session. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and thanks again. This has been a pleasure. I will see you in the next live stream. Take care, everyone.